When one hears the term Scream Queens, it's inevitable that a single name will pop into your head, and that's Jamie Lee Curtis. Jamie Lee Curtis was the first actress to be given this monikers in the early 1980s, after following up her breakout role in Halloween with a series of similar slasher films. Since then, she's become known as the definitive Scream Queen, and proudly owns that title. However, a number of equally high-profile actresses have also garnered the title after appearing in a string of scary movies. One of the downsides of the horror genre being so vast is that a lot of really fine work goes unnoticed. So let's celebrate some lesser appreciated actresses that gave their all to an impressive number of genre roles. I'm Jess from What Culture, and here are forgotten horror movie Scream Queens. Betsy Russell. Betsy Russell was well on her way to becoming an 80s teen idol, with roles in films like Private School, Avenging Angel, and Tomboy. However, by taking on the lead in 1989's slasher cheese fest Cheerleader Camp, she began a path to becoming a very different kind of icon. Russell would make another genre appearance in 1991's schlocky and confused Camp Fear. Following this, her acting career quieted as she concentrated on raising her children. It was actually Russell's engagement to Saw producer Mark Berg that saw her career roar back to life. Sensing a fun tie-in to her early genre days, Berg cast Russell in a brief cameo as Jigsaw's wife Jill in 2006's Saw 3. Although their engagement didn't last, Russell found herself given plum roles in the following 4 sequels as her character expanded. Here she exhibited an emotional rawness and a calculating villainous way that quickly made Jill Tuck a fan favorite. Outside of the franchise, Russell accepted roles in other genre projects, including 2010's Chain Letter and 2014's My Trip Back from the Dark Side. This would bring her horror film tally to an impressive 8. Although Betsy appears to have stepped away from the genre for the time being, preferring to concentrate on being a life coach, we do hope she can be lured back to add to her impressive repertoire. Joan Collins. I know what you're thinking. How can one consider a British dame to be a Scream Queen? Well, these aren't my words. They come from the legendary dame herself. In a 2010 interview with Piers Morgan, Collins described herself during the 70s as the queen of bad horror films. From the years 1970 to 1977, Dame Joan Collins appeared in 7 horror films. But of course, whether they're bad or not is a matter of opinion. It always raises a chuckle seeing Collins fight off papier-mâché creatures in 1977's Empire of the Ants, or become murderously jealous of a tree in 1973's Tales That Witness Madness. However, luckily for us, some of these roles gave Collins a real chance to shine as an actress. Chief among them being her nail-bitingly tense segment in 1972's Tales from the Crypt. Here, Joan plays a woman trapped inside by a homicidal Santa, but unable to call for help as she's just murdered her husband. Collins shines as the cold-hearted vixen, but also sells her fear so well that we genuinely don't want to see any harm come to her. No matter what she's doing in each of her numerous horror roles, Collins gives her all, and more than earns a spot on this list. Katie Cassidy. Beginning in 2006, Katie Cassidy found turns in The Black Christmas and When a Stranger Calls remakes. Fans were much more receptive to her turn as final girl Kelly in Black Christmas. There, Cassidy embodied the likable, naive college girl perfectly and earned her final girl stripes with some ballsy fighting back. Next, Cassidy would be criminally underused in the criminally bad 2010 remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Set up as the final girl, series fans familiar with her character know her time is limited. Upon her swift death, the movie is passed over to Rooney Mara's perpetually bored Nancy, making us long for Katie to return. Cassidy's final horror film appearance to date was 2014's Wolves at the Door, a graphic retelling of the infamous Manson family murders. Despite its 0% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, wow, I didn't even know you could get 0%. It's undeniable that Cassidy shines as an actress here. Please, somebody just put her in a movie that does her talent justice. Joan Crawford. Although she was a Hollywood legend, Academy Award winner Joan Crawford relied on quick money from horror movies towards the end of her career. Beginning with the release of 1962's Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Crawford found herself trapped in a niche she couldn't escape. Audiences adored her woman in peril sagas, resulting in offers to star in horror pictures. From 64 until her career's finale in 77, Crawford appeared in an additional 4 horror films. These include 2 William Castle-produced thrillers, Straight Jacket and I Saw Saw What You Did. Away from Hollywood, Crawford also made 2 British genre pictures, 1967's surprisingly charming proto-slasher Berserk, and 1970's Trog, which was sadly a very cheap, schlocky end to a glittering screen career. Completing her horror catalogue would be her final role in the supernatural anthology series The Sixth Sense, in the unfortunately titled episode, Dear Joan, We're Going to Scare You to Death. Ooh. In the decades since the term was coined, Joan Crawford has been embraced posthumously as a scream queen. Betty Davis. Did you know that Hollywood legend Betty Davis actually starred in more horror movies than even Jamie Lee Curtis herself? Falling into a similar career pattern to co-star Joan Crawford, Davis had more luck with the genre after receiving an Oscar nod for Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. She chose to capitalize on this by appearing in a series of similar chilling thrillers. These included spellbinding performances in 1964's Hush Hush, Sweet Caroline, 1964's Dead Ringer, and a truly chilling turn in 1965's The Nanny. Other big screen genre roles included 1976's Burnt Offerings and 2 horror light projects for Disney, with 1978's Return from Witch Mountain and 82's Watcher in the Woods. Davis also embraced the popular 70s trend of made-for-TV horror movies of the week. Again, it seems quite evident that this Hollywood legend was a scream queen before it was cool.
Debbie Harry. In 1981, music icon Debbie Harry took her first mainstream acting role in David Cronenberg's body horror flick Videodrome. Not only did Harry impress with some surprising dramatic skills, but also shocked as she indulged in S&M practices and showed a much darker persona than her usual image. Although Videodrome didn't ignite a successful acting career, Harry periodically dipped in and out of the genre over the next 3 decades. This began with a starring role in an episode of Tales from the Dark Side. Her episode The Moth is a rather confusing tale of a dying witch trapped under a glass. Harry's performance in the episode subsequently got her cast in the 1991 film adaptation of the anthology show. Here she plays a housewife planning to cook a young child to serve at her dinner party. The young boy, however, distracts her with 3 horror tales from her favourite book, until Harry ultimately ends up in the oven herself. The following year, Harry would play the lead in the Showtime original slasher movie Intimate Stranger, playing a phone sex worker targeted by a serial killer and showing some impressive final girl wits. Next, she would appear in 1993's Body Bags for HBO. Her final genre appearance to date was a cameo in 2007's Animorph, bringing her horror tally to a very respectable 5. Fay Wray. Whatever happened to Fay Wray and her delicate satin-draped frame? Forget Jamie Lee Curtis or Neve Campbell. If one traces horror cinema and the term scream queen back to the very beginning, we find Hollywood legend Fay Wray was the first actress in history to earn the legendary moniker. However, a mistake most make is assuming Wray became a horror movie staple due to her shrieking turn in 1933's King Kong. The truth of the matter is that Kong was actually Wray's 4th out of 5 genre roles. Initially a role offered to Jean Harlow, Wray's calibre within the burgeoning genre and her impressive pipes won her the part. Prior, Wray had starring turns in Dr. X, a very early take on the slasher movie formula, and The Mystery of the Wax Museum. Both pictures are considered landmark genre pieces almost 90 years later for being 2 of the first horror films shot in colour. The latter movie would later be remade as House of Wax with Vincent Price, not the Paris Hilton one. Following King Kong's, giant success, Wray would only make one more horror film, 1934's Black Moon, choosing more comedic and dramatic turns with her enhanced profile. However, the impact she and her 5 genre roles had on the horror landscape as a whole is absolutely undeniable. Wray was the first actress to build a rapport with the public through a specific genre and is unquestionably the OG scream queen. Jill Schoelen. Jill Schoelen seemed to rise quickly through the horror genre before unexpectedly giving up her career at its peak. Schoelen began her genre work in style, working with the legend himself, Wes Craven. The first of her 7 horror turns was a supporting role in Craven's 1985 made-for-TV movie Chiller. 2 years later, Schoelen would form a final girl double act with Shelley Hack and face off against Terry O'Quinn in the cult classic slasher The Stepfather. This would immediately be followed by a trio of leading horror roles in 1989, beginning with the ridiculous mutant snake flick Curse 2: The Bite. Schoelen would flex her final girl muscles again, starring opposite Brad Pitt in the darkly comic slasher Cutting Class. This was quickly followed by the 1989 adaptation of The Phantom of the Opera, starring opposite another legend, Robert Englund. 1991's Popcorn saw her again cast as the target of a homicidal serial killer, this time set against the backdrop of a film festival. Schoelen also added to her impressive co-star roster here, sharing the screen with Dee Wallace. Jill's last genre role is without doubt her strongest, her absolutely harrowing turn in the criminally forgotten made-for-TV sequel, When a Stranger Calls Back. PJ Soles. I know what you're thinking, how on earth is PJ Soles a scream queen? However, you may just be surprised at the extent of her genre work. PJ Soles would first broach horror in 1975 with a supporting role in the cheesy drive-in flick Bloodbath. Her unforgettable cackling turn in Brian De Palma's Carrie came next, swiftly followed by a bit part in the chilling 1977 television movie The Possessed, starring Harrison Ford. We all know that in 1978 Soles would totally own the role of Linda in John Carpenter's Halloween. She would spend the next few years becoming somewhat of a cult cinema icon, with roles in Rock and Roll High School, Stripes, and Private Benjamin. In 1984, Soles took the lead in the slasher Innocent Prey, portraying a wife moving to Australia to escape her psychotic husband, only to fall victim to an equally terrible, creepy landlord. Next came further B-horror roles in Alienator, 1996's Uncle Sam, and 2000's direct-to-video Mirror Mirror 4, Reflections. A cameo role in Rob Zombie's 2005 The Devil's Rejects would seemingly set off a slew of almost exclusively independent horror projects that continue to this day. She can be seen in films such as 2006's The Tooth Fairy, 2012's The Butterfly Room, and provides an uncredited voice role in 2018's blockbuster Halloween reboot, taking her horror tally to over 15.